promoting her to panelist. And it says we are being live streamed, but let's see if that's actually the case while it loads YouTube. And perfect, it is. We are live. How exciting. Save some time. I was expecting one or two more of the committee members, so I'll just give them a minute. And if they don't show up, we can get started.
All right.
All right, I have given folks the extra 2 minutes. So I now call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. or 7:03 p.m. I should say, on Wednesday, June 7th. So I will quickly go ahead and call the roll. Then from there, we will go over the agenda, and then we have several items for official business. So I'll now go over the roll. Do I have Commissioner Ray?
I'm here.
Commissioner Jacobson, I am here. Commissioner Footer?
Here.
Committee Member Batal?
Here.
Committee Member Schaaf?
Here.
And Committee Member Remington?
Here.
Awesome. Seeing as we have 6 out of the 12, sorry, math is hard for me today. 6 out of the 10 committee members, we have a quorum. I noted this meeting via our ANC 1E listserv. We also presented it on social media, the website, and our e-calendar. And I will go ahead and share the meeting agenda from my screen. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. We will now go over the agenda. We have the consent agenda, which is just approving the May meeting minutes. We'll have some time for community members to announce and give any sort of quick presentations with 3 minutes. And then just a quick update from me on recent ANC resolutions. Commissioner Footer will present on his 8th Street transportation package. We'll have DDOT giving an update on Georgia Avenue, and then I have a couple of resolutions that I had sent out and are available on the website. Are there any additions to the agenda? All right, I will now accept a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda by unanimous consent.
Seeing as there is no dissent for the motion to approve the consent agenda by unanimous consent, it is adopted. I'm just going to write that down. All right, the next item are community member announcements and presentations. I will go ahead and just make a quick announcement. I did a cleanup with members of ANC 1A and with a member that was Commissioner Easley, and then a member of ANC 1B, Commissioner Lakatos, collected about 11 bags of trash a couple weekends ago, and we'll continue to hold more of these events to pick up trash in the area. Also had a couple of exciting developments in 1E06. We had 3 speed humps installed along 9th Street behind Banneker. So that will help with some of the safety around Banneker and the School Without Walls Francis Stevens there. And I was able to get DPW to reinstall 3 public trash bins from an ANC resolution that we had passed in April. And I see Commissioner Footer has his hand raised.
Congrats on those accomplishments. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that I received notice that Howard University has submitted public space applications for Lot 3. We knew this was coming, but I'm very excited that this is finally coming to fruition. And so I've connected them to Josh over to you so they can hopefully come next month. I believe their hearing is in August, and so that timing should be good to go. But just I guess a quick request, Commissioner Ray or Michael, if you don't mind, I'd love to put some time on your calendar just to get some of your background knowledge on the process and some advice. And then two, I want to bring back up the resolution that we put together around Bryant Street bike lanes and make sure that we include that within the request or questions that we have for the presenters, because this proposal includes building the connector Bryant Street from Georgia to 8th. So that would be part of our resolution moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Footer. And we should talk logistics offline. I just checked TOPS and that our comment as an ANC is due by the 28th of June. So
looking at that. Okay.
Yeah, we would have to do some sort of resolution at the ANC meeting if we wanted to support it. And I guess, Commissioner Ray, do you know if they usually accept extensions for those sorts of deadlines?
Well, it's probably scheduled, that's a hearing, and I don't know how often they have their hearings, so.
Yeah, the hearing's in August, so I'm surprised that our comments are due within a few weeks.
Then you might be able to submit them later, but you could double check.
Okay. Any other announcements from the committee members or commissioners? And what about anyone that is an attendee? If you have any announcements, feel free to raise your hand and we can take you off mute. Commissioner Footer, can you remind me how folks that dialed in can take themselves off mute? I did not write that down.
If they want to raise their hand and they're calling in rather than being online, they can dial *9.
Okay. I will give the person that called in a moment to dial *9 if they wanted to say anything. All right, we will jump into official business. Commissioner Footer, quick update on this TPS related resolution. This was something that came up after the ANC meeting or the TPS meeting last month. The intersection where 10th, Florida, and Berry all intersect near the Whole Foods, if folks are aware. There's an NOI release for that to create a roundabout there. And our ask for DDOT in this case was to add in some bike lanes, since that is already on the bike lane plan. And that would connect 9th Street and 11th Street bike lanes, make things a little bit safer in the area. So that's what that resolution was about. And I see that the person who dialed in has raised their hand, so I'll allow them to speak quickly. You should be able to take yourself off mute.
It's *9 to unmute, I believe.
Oh, sorry, it's *6. *9 raises and lower your hand. *6 unmutes.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, everyone. This is Mignon. I was just letting you know I was online. I'm having technical issues, but I just wanted to let you guys know I'm online.
Oh, awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. All right, I will disable your talking for now then. All right, now I will turn it over to Commissioner Footer to present on the 8th Street transportation package.
Thank you. I will share my screen. So I presented on this last month, and we went through it. And so I want to hear from you guys. Do you want me to go through the whole thing again? Are there any specific questions? I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. Nothing has changed. Let me put it that way. And I can give you a quick update. So I guess I should start there. So per last conversation, Howard University came and had requested that we give them a little bit more time to review some of the materials. We did agree that I would follow up with them after graduation, just knowing that things are a little busy for them around that time and want to be respectful, and that we would follow up after graduation, and that the anticipation would be that we would get together before this meeting and receive their feedback, because we want to vote tonight on this so that the full commission can take it under consideration in the June meeting. I followed up with them after graduation. They were getting together Monday thereafter, which I believe was the 22nd. Yep, the 22nd, with Redfin. I believe that's the name of their company. And then I suggested that we get together and walk through some of their edits. I never heard back from them, and so I reached out to Teresa, and her and Dr. Leonard had been on PTO, and I reached back out to her yesterday and asked, and they said that they have compiled some responses and questions, and that they were going to send it over, but I haven't received anything. But I think it's exactly what I'm pretty confident I know what they're going to ask questions and provide feedback on. And I don't think that it would deter me from asking for your feedback, or for the committee to consider it tonight. I do want to point out, because we may disagree on some of the recommendations in here. What this is, in my mind, is a roadmap for how we are going to advocate for certain things with the city. I have done a lot of due diligence in trying to understand what is feasible and realistic in here. And that includes making sure that it is within not only the guidelines for planning, but also the future plans for this neighborhood, and things like the Duke Ellington plan, things of that nature. So we've done a fair amount of due diligence in this. Howard University will be impacted by 3 things in particular. One is very optional. It's more of giving them an opportunity, which I can actually show you. It's around sidewalks. If we make the street a one-way, it basically frees up about 4 to 5 feet for them to expand the sidewalk. And there's nothing saying they have to do that. It's more of an opportunity for them. There have been a lot of people who have been very interested in trying to expand the sidewalk, maybe put tree boxes, things of that nature. Tree boxes, tree canopies, things of that nature are a priority for the city as well. So I know that the DDOT neighborhood advisory group also tries to push that when developers are presenting plans, things of that nature. So we're very in lockstep with what the city's plans and guidelines are. So what all of that is to mean is that if there are maybe differences in opinion, it's something that I feel very confident that we will work with DDOT and Howard University to discuss and figure out and come with compromises, things of that nature. But as far as this goes, this is the people's voice. This has been voted on this has people's responses directly from the community through a survey, through more than 110 conversations that I've had. So it's been vetted. People have spoken on this. It's the people's package on transportation and reforming 8th Street. So I feel like this is a very solid plan to start to have those conversations with the city and Howard.
And on this, it wouldn't necessarily even have to be Howard, right? DDOT could take on that sidewalk widening if they wanted to.
Yes, it would be something that we would work with Howard on because they're constructing a whole block. And so it would make sense for them to incorporate it into their plan. But I mean, if they push back, I guess that could be the other option. And once it's done, DDOT comes in and expands the sidewalk.
Any other questions from folks on this particular piece? And I think you mentioned there too.
Yeah, Michael.
You said 3 things. You mentioned the one, which is the sidewalk. Did you want to just highlight what you think the other 2 might be?
Sure. So it's the one way, which is right here. No, after this is the one that we were just talking about where they could expand the sidewalk. The making 8th Street between B and W and one way going northbound. That's the thing that they've had the most questions and maybe concerns around. And then the other one they're kind of interrelated, but it's around Howard University decommissioning a curb cut in order to increase parking capacity on 8th Street.
Great, thank you. I think I would agree with you that we can continue that conversation even if this package goes forward the way that you're recommending it right now. So thank you.
Any other questions from folks in the committee? What about folks in the attendees? If you have any comments or questions, feel free to raise your hand. And if you are dialed in, you can use *9 to raise or lower your hand and *6 to toggle mute and unmute. All right, I don't see anyone raising their hand. The last thing that I'll add is I agree with Commissioner Ray that this is just a starting point for the conversation. Things could change between now and the ANC meeting, and this just gives us an opportunity to say that the committee thinks like this is at least a good starting point for us to be considering as an ANC. So I'm comfortable with moving this on for now, and then getting the feedback from Howard before the ANC meeting. Do I have any motions to adopt this transportation package? And I'm not sure what exactly the final form will look like before it gets to the ANC, because it might be weird to just like pass a PowerPoint, but we can use this as the basis for whatever we're sending out.
Yeah, I mean, I will write whatever resolution I'm sure we want to consider, but the motion would say, I would motion that we endorse the 13 recommendations proposed in the 8th Street Transportation Redesign Package.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
And committee member Remington, did you want to log a vote?
Aye.
All right, with 6 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 abstentions from this group. We will move on to the next topic.
Thank you.
Good night, Brian.
Oh, I don't have to leave just yet. I
Oh.
was expecting that might have taken longer, so I was just preparing myself.
And I believe Zach and Betty Mendez is from DDOT. Is that right? If so, please raise your hand. I'm seeing an email that you maybe didn't get the link, but I think you figured it out. Perfect.
Hi, I'm here.
Hey, Zach. Thanks for taking the time to join us on a Wednesday night. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I was just going to quickly introduce you. Zach, we'll let you introduce your full title and everything, but Zach is from DDOT, and he will be here to present on updates to the Georgia Ave bus priority project. You want to take it away, Zach?
Yeah, let me get my presentations shared really quick. Alrighty, good evening, everyone. Thanks again for having me. My name is Zach and Betty Mendez. I'm a transportation planner on the bus priority team with DDOT. So some of you know me, Commissioner Ray. I definitely know that we've chatted about this project before because there is a piece of this project, which we'll get into here in a minute, that started last year with, I guess, the previous commissions. I think it was like 1A and 1B that are now part of 1E. And so we've also had some updates to the project since that point in time. So I think there's a lot of new faces in here. So I'll kind of cover, this is kind of like the general kickoff presentation. So I'll just walk through this and then maybe expand on a couple points that are relevant to those of you who have been involved with this for the past year. And then just kind of let you all know kind of where we're at and where we're going and the goals here. So for those of you who don't know, it's kind of setting the stage for the bus priority program. We were seeing Metro bus speeds in the region decrease pre-pandemic. This was costing WMATA up to like $30 million a year to maintain the same level of service, just because if the buses are running slower at the very minimum, you need more buses and more operators to make sure that you're ensuring that there's the same level of service on those roadways. Now that we're seeing automobile traffic back to near pre-pandemic levels, we're seeing those impacts to bus speeds again. And bus speeds or slower buses really impact folks' access to everything, really. If you look at the bottom here, you can see that 67% of Metrobus riders live in zero-car households. So they can't just hop in the car if the bus isn't coming to get to their job, to their work, to their doctor's appointment, anything like that. And so really critical that we make sure our buses are running and running efficiently. So coming out of that, Mayor Bowser introduced the bus priority program to help improve bus speeds and reliability across all 8 wards of the district. You can see our bus priority map there stretches into all the wards, all the corners of the district. These projects have been prioritized based on transit performance, which is ridership and bus speeds mostly. There's other metrics in there, as well as equity. Those are kind of the main metrics that have prioritized our corridors. It really kind of rose Georgia Avenue to almost the top of the list, which is why we're kind of tackling it at the beginning of this program. I do want to mention, just because sometimes we get into planning and then things can sit on shelves until there's funding. These projects are funded for planning, design, and implementation. And so we generally are talking about a year for planning, a year for design, and then a year for implementation for each of these projects. And how we move forward with these projects is we have a toolkit. Bus priority is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Georgia Avenue is different from 14th Street, which is different from Florida, which is different from MLK, right? The list goes on. Each roadway has its own unique characteristics, either in terms of land use or the delay that we see to the buses on the corridor can be caused by different things. So we have this toolkit of over 20 treatments that we can choose from based on the delay that we're seeing, based on the comments that we're hearing from the public, based on what we're hearing from bus operators and bus riders that is impacting their journey. So these are just 4 examples here. Again, there's 20 treatments. I can link you to the toolbox if you're interested in kind of looking through that. But these are just 4 examples. Now, why is Georgia Avenue so important for us? Well, actually, sorry, let me take a step back. What we're looking at for Georgia Avenue here is the 4.5-mile stretch from Berry Place to Eastern Avenue. These are our new scope extents, our new boundaries for this project. Kind of looking at the corridor history in terms of bus priority in the past, you may know that there are bus lanes from Florida Avenue to Berry Place already. Those were installed in 2016, kind of before this formal program was established, but just kind of acknowledging that those are there. Now to the more recent history, which I kind of alluded to earlier. We initiated a bus priority project from Berry Place to Kansas Ave, so kind of a 1.5-mile stretch down here at the bottom of this new corridor. And that ended up, we brought that with you all to a concept level. Just that project, kind of the input that we've received from that, the work that we did on that is not being erased, is not going away. It is being rolled into this larger scope, larger project. So we're not kind of losing anything that we got from you all or worked on together through this new kind of expanded scope. It's kind of being rolled in together and combined with kind of what else we're hearing along the rest of the corridor. To that tune, earlier this year, we kicked off kind of the next segment of the corridor, which was Kansas to Missouri. And it was around that time that we were realizing that Georgia Avenue is just a little bit different. The bus priority program really likes to take on smaller segments of roadways so that we can implement quicker. That works well on most of our corridors, but for Georgia Avenue, it needed to be looked at together for efficiency of planning, design, implementation, community engagement. We really just kind of needed to look at it all together, especially when we, also are talking about like environmental review and traffic analysis and things like that. We'll want to review the whole corridor together. And I believe, I don't know if everyone shares the sentiment, but there was definitely folks in the community who were asking us to do it all together as well. So I want to acknowledge that that is a piece of input that we did receive as well. So there was kind of some support for this. So just letting you know that kind of all of these pieces that were worked on in the past year are not disappearing. None of that input is going away. We're kind of rolling it all together, catching everyone further north up along the corridor in Ward 4, catching them up to kind of where the project is, and kind of looking at the corridor comprehensively. So now, why is Georgia Avenue so important? I think those of you who are on Georgia Avenue often probably know this. Route 70 is the busiest bus in the entire Metro bus system. Route 79 is not that far behind. It's usually within the top 10, but it kind of bounces around. Route 70 is the top year over year. And that makes Georgia Avenue one of the busiest surface corridors, transit corridors in the district by far. I mean, it really kind of surpasses any others. But the buses can be very slow. They can average less than 5 miles an hour during that peak period. And also, there are certain delays that really impact headway regularity. For a route like Georgia, really, it's coming so frequently that, theoretically, you shouldn't have to look at a schedule to catch the bus. You should be able to go and know that there should be a bus there within 10 minutes or less. But we know that doesn't happen, right? Those of you who maybe have waited for a bus know that sometimes there's a random 20-minute gap or a 30-minute gap, or, and it's just, it really impacts riders' ability to rely on that transportation. As I mentioned earlier, the majority of folks riding those buses do not have an alternative. So we've got a lot of people riding these buses, and the bus is moving very slow, especially during certain points of the day. And we also know that Georgia Avenue is very dangerous. It's one of our high injury, Vision Zero high injury corridors, which means it sees a disproportionate number of high injury and fatality crashes. And we know that many of those crashes and fatalities, of course, have happened within our project boundaries, unfortunately. So with all that, kind of bringing all of this forward to their project goals of course, increasing bus speed and reliability, but also improving safety in the process. We won't just do something that helps the buses, but doesn't help improve safety. We are working on that safety component as well in close coordination with our Vision Zero team. So a little bit of what is kind of feeding into this project as we move forward into concept development and things like that. Again, you'll notice the past projects that we were working on with you all, of course, will be folded in, as well as any new public feedback that we're hearing as part of this new expanded scope. But we're also doing a needs assessment in terms of safety. Are there crash themes happening at particular intersections that we can address in certain ways? what are the like specific delays we're seeing at specific intersections for the bus that need specific treatments. But we're also guided by our bus priority plan, Move DC, as well as best practices, right? We don't necessarily always need to reinvent the wheel. Other peer cities are doing things, we're doing things in other parts of the city that we can learn from and continue evolving on as we move these projects forward. So, these are kind of all of the inputs that will grow together and create the bus priority project as we move forward. In terms of timeline for this new expanded scope, we're kind of in this like kickoff, re-kickoff, I don't know exactly what to call it, but kickoff of the expanded scope. We're starting to collect that public feedback. We welcome your public feedback for those of you who, for everyone. We're welcoming that feedback. For those of you who have been involved in the past, like I said, your comments are kind of being integrated into this project, but feel free to provide additional, more comments, whatever you'd like. But as we collect that feedback, we will start kind of working that into a concept or concepts. I just kind of want to emphasize that a little bit. There are particular portions of the corridor where we may not be able to do a lot of different things due to the kind of the physical geometry of the roadway. These projects do not kind of expand roadways. We're not moving curb. We're just kind of looking at that existing right of way. So sometimes what we can do is a little bit limited in terms of being a little bit more innovative. But it will improve bus service, right? I don't want to kind of let that sound like kind of at a loss. But there will be concept or concepts as we move into the summer and fall that we will bring out for review for you all and feedback, and then concept refinement that can extend past the fall into the winter into 2024. But really, once we hit like spring 2024, we want to get this started in design so that we can start construction in 2025 on the whole corridor. That is at the moment, the plan is to kind of do this all at once. Obviously, it'll be kind of like, we won't construct all at once. It'll just kind of like phase up along the corridor or down. I'm not really sure the best practice there, but construction beginning along this project in 2025. So we have three main ways to collect feedback for you all, for your constituents, for your community. There's a bus priority feedback form, which I can drop the link to in the chat. It's also hyperlinked when I send you this presentation here. But you can leave specific project feedback for the Georgia Avenue project. There's also a bus priority email, buspriority@dc.gov. And then if you know folks or you yourself don't want to deal with technology and emails and all that kind of stuff, or folks who don't have access to that, we do have a phone number that folks can call and leave a voicemail with their comments about a particular project. So those are our three kind of feedback mechanisms, and that's where we're at right now, is just kind of collecting feedback. What's working well on Georgia Avenue as a whole, what isn't working well, what needs to be maintained, what needs to be changed, are kind of the four major questions that we're looking at this moment. And with that, that's the kickoff presentation. Happy to answer any questions for you all. Excited to work with you all and get this moving.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. I see Commissioner Footer's hand is raised. Also, I'm getting some feedback, I think, from you, Zach.
Thank you. First, Zach, thank you so much for coming and presenting. We've heard a lot about this. We've been very excited. As you probably know, Georgia Avenue goes through every single SMD in 1E, so it impacts every single one of the commissioners. So I know we're all kind of eager to hear about it. I guess my first question is just around, like, what level of design are you guys reopening the book and everything is laid out on the table for consideration in the design phase? If so, what happens if there's a decision to go in a totally different design route? And how would you incorporate something that's like below Barry, between Barry to Florida?
I mean, I think, I don't know. I mean, we got to a concept for kind of your section of Georgia Avenue south of Kansas. So I think as part of this process, we're kind of, looking to confirm is that still where we're at. I think, if we're talking about things like potentially like center running bus lanes and things like that, I think some of the challenges that prevented us from moving forward with that as a concept prior are kind of still around and still relevant. But we can certainly kind of like look and reevaluate some of those other opportunities. Yeah, does that answer your question? I think there was like, okay.
I guess I want to set some expectations because I would be remiss not to share that there have been a couple of members of the Howard University community that have expressed interest in or concern over losing parking because of the proposed designs around Georgia Avenue north of Berry Street. And if we're going to be receiving feedback, is the feedback that, hey, everything is available now, like express what you would want, such as center bus lanes, or is it more of a modest, what do you think is missing and how can we add upon what's already part of the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's open in that if like what is selected is not what people want, or what was kind of worked on with the community is not, you know, we start hearing overwhelmingly that that's not what folks are wanting, then we can kind of reevaluate. But I think it's a starting point for this southern section. Certainly it can change once we hit Kansas, once we hit Missouri, once we hit, you know, a certain place, we can shift to curbside or, you know, whatever is kind of interest up there. But I think it's a starting point down here. And I know we've had conversations with Howard University as well. And there is a stretch like right north of Berry where there is a parking lane now, but it's like that right lane is not wide enough for a travel lane and parking. I don't know exactly how that happened. But I know they were concerned about kind of the transition from those offset lane or from that curbside lane that's existing to the offset condition. We were going to lose some parking in that stretch. There were some concerns about that. And we can kind of like reevaluate and see if there's kind of a different way to approach that transition.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I have a couple of other questions that I'll pass for now.
All right, I'll take one. I guess just a quick comment on that. I expect it to be difficult to keep or maintain the parking there just because of the width of the roadway while also having a dedicated lane. And in the end, I think a dedicated lane through that stretch is the most important aspect of the project. So I would continue to encourage you on like making sure that dedicated lanes happen no matter where they are.
I second that.
Okay.
I think you'll hear from the majority of people on this commission that a bus is a high priority and that losing 12 to 15 parking spots versus making it very safe to travel on Georgia Avenue is the highest priority.
One thing I was going to ask, since I have some anecdotal data on like ridership in terms of Howard students versus like elementary students. I understand that the ridership data that is collected just groups all of them into the category of students, and curious if in future studies you could break that category out and say like, non-collegiate students and collegiate students are some other way of dividing that. So it's clear like what the different use cases are.
Yeah, so I know like DDOT will have data on the Kids Ride Free ridership, which is exclusive to DPS, like high school and under. I think in terms of breaking out the collegiate ridership, it would depend on if Howard has any sort of like metro program set up. Otherwise, I think they would just kind of get lost. You know, there would be no differentiation between my tap and someone who's at Howard.
Well, I thought there were surveys that were done in the past to figure out if someone was using the bus for school, for work, for.
You're right. There were. Yep. Oh yeah. I think I might have sent those to you. I forgot about those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. I'll have to see who collects that data and see the next time that they're gonna collect it and see if they can try to differentiate a little bit some of that data. So we know are these kids right into the high school, or all of those schools kind of up near Kansas, or are these college kids going to Howard?
Yep, I appreciate it. I believe Committee Member Schaaf had his hand raised next.
Thank you, Zach. So I just wanted to reiterate a question that Commissioner Footer had asked about what happens with the portion below Berry Place, and if that would also be, I mean, as you said, it was in 216, and so I would imagine also design guidelines have changed since then. Will that be, part of, will that be considered in some way as part of this larger plan? And then just in general, like what does experience tell us about what kind of impact on bus speed people should expect from this kind of initiative in general, or other impact on how the buses are functioning?
Yeah, so the portion south of Berry, I think if there's like fatal flaws, or maybe that's not the right terminology to use, but if there's something serious down there, we can definitely look at that. It is not technically part of the scope, but I do know that as part of the bus priority program or project, we are going to be looking at stop spacing and along the whole corridor. And I would like to make sure that we're looking at that from kind of like Florida T, if you will, up, just to make sure that we're not just kind of like dropping off at Berry, even though maybe there's a few tweaks that are needed south of Berry. So I think that was actually included when we did our first concept, was a couple of changes south of Berry. So we are looking at the bus stops down there. There is also another bus priority project that is coming in along Florida Ave and U Street, or I guess they're two separate projects technically, that could potentially help us make changes at the Florida Avenue intersection. So, that's kind of like a roundabout answer. That's maybe not a direct answer. It's like, we can look at things that are major issues, but it's not part of the scope. So, we won't be looking at it maybe specifically unless we hear a lot of people saying there's a major issue at, W Street, or, whatever the case might be. Remind me your second question. I'm sorry.
What the impact of these, the potential measures might have on the speed of buses, like what is experience in the district or elsewhere? I'm just, curious. I don't have that information.
Yeah, so other cities, particularly with offset bus lanes, which is, kind of removing them from the curb, not having curbside. I believe they were averaging about 10 to 15% time savings. So when you're looking at like the 4.5 mile stretch, that can sometimes take upwards of an hour. It's a pretty decent time savings, especially if you're looking to catch a different bus or the Metro Rail. Minutes really add up and they really matter, especially if you're catching a bus that may not come as frequently as the Georgia Avenue bus. So other cities are seeing 10 to 15%. I won't necessarily kind of say that's what we're aiming for on Georgia Avenue, or that's the goal. I don't want to kind of make that statement right now, but that's what other cities are seeing from similar bus lanes, or from offset bus lanes at least.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I believe Committee Member Vital is next.
So I just wanted to say, very excited about this project. I live right off Georgia Lane, and I have avoided taking the 70 bus a lot because it just ends up not being timely enough for me. So really, really looking forward to this improvement. And forgive me, because I believe this was from the earlier stage of the planning when it was just from Kansas to Berry. But I believe the DDOT said that they would not be considering center running bus lanes on the Georgia project. And I just wanted to say that I've heard a lot of, basically I've heard a lot of people saying that they're disappointed in that decision in the neighborhood. I've talked to some neighbors, some friends, people who are, in the ANC, but also rely on the 70 bus for transportation and, frequent a lot of the businesses on Georgia Avenue, and we're just disappointed to see that DDOT was not going to be prioritizing that. So just kind of wanted to bring that concern here. But overall, very excited for this project, and not really a question, but just kind of bringing some concerns of the community to the forefront. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that leaves me next. Good to see you again, Zach. Thanks. What's the total budget now that we're talking about the entire team? Do you have a number?
Oh, I don't off the top of my head. Should be whatever I said as part of Barry to Kansas, probably times 3, but I can double check that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, that puts us in a ballpark, which kind of answers my second question, which is, we're not planning on pouring a lot of concrete here. I'm assuming this is more flex posts and with the rubberized outs and those kinds of treatments.
Yeah, I mean, I think, if we're looking at curb extensions, which I know we talked about as part of the previous project, or bus boarding kind of platforms, we'd like to put concrete where we can. It ends up turning into like a drainage type question, especially if there's like big drains like right at the bus stop. That becomes problematic to move in a timely manner. So it just kind of depends, but I guess yes, generally more quick implementation solutions, but we do try to get in a couple of like concrete platforms where we can and things like that.
Okay. So we could make recommendations on that depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Okay. And my colleagues may know these numbers, but I don't. What are the lane width requirements when we're talking about a bus lane versus a parking lane versus a regular driving lane?
Yes. Okay. Testing my knowledge on the spot. So I think the minimum for a parking lane is 7, but if we need it to accommodate loading and unloading, it needs to be around 9 or so, at least 8 or 9. I think the preference is that they're 8, but they can go down to 7. But then again, when there's loading, to make sure that they're not then like blocking the bus lane or anything like that, we want them to be a little bit wider. For a bus lane, we need at least 11. And then for a travel lane, I believe the standard is 10. Yes.
Yeah, that's
and then I think when you need like a turn lane and things like that, you can.
When we look at that area in front of Howard University, that's where that comes into play. And I'll just be curious. Having those numbers in my head is helpful. And then the last, I will just mention, it's more of a comment, but back to your previous piece on the below Barry before you get to Florida. The one major change now, especially since your construction timeline is now out to 2025, we are going to see the bond, brick, water, all of the lot 3 buildings. Some of that is actually going to be constructed probably by the time this thing comes online. The lanes there are all curbside, not offset. So there is going to be this new sort of parking dilemma as people are starting to come and go from what are now vacant properties to active commercial centers. And I think that you're going to see a harder use of those curbsides once that happens. And so if it is a possibility to think below Barry on non-curbside, it might be worth looking at that, or I don't know, you may need to open that up because the construction timeline now is going to collide.
Okay. Those are those lots kind of like south of McDonald's,
Correct, including the McDonald's. The McDonald's will be gone. Everything below there will be a buzz with activity. So that's going to be a populated area at some point, and I think it's just going to more people are going to pull to the side to grab something or deliver, or everything else that people do. So those curbside lanes are going to be harder to keep open.
Yeah. I don't know if you all know Kelsey. She's in our neighborhood planning branch. She's working with the developers of that project, and we've talked, and I've expressed those concerns about those curbside lanes, and are they going to have somewhere for folks to pull off, or we've started those discussions a little bit, but I appreciate you bringing them up again, and we'll make sure that we are staying coordinated with Kelsey, and we're looking at what we might be able to do down there to make sure that those bus lanes stay viable. Definitely.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I will now open it up to members of the community that are dialed in. I think that was 7 seconds, so we can move on. Just wanted to thank you again, Zach. I guess the only other comment that I would have is my understanding is Metro buses are rolling out the cameras on board, and I assume that that program will have a pretty decent headway by the time that this gets constructed and the lanes start being in use. So hopefully that will help with some of the blockage that we're seeing on 14th currently.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because Georgia Avenue has those existing lanes, and I think that these buses should be some of the first kind of equipped with those bus lane cameras. I'm not totally sure, but I would guess since there are bus lanes there, you know, at least in a portion, then we should start seeing that enforcement once those cameras roll out or soon thereafter.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. Well, any other questions from the committee members? Otherwise, we can let Zach go.
I'll put those links in the chat as well once we're done here.
Awesome.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks again, Zach. Appreciate your time. I will move you back down to attendee. And then there were 5 of us. The next item on the, well, there's no actions to take with that since we don't have a resolution or anything associated with it. Might want to have a resolution in the future, but don't think we need to do anything just yet. But the next one that I want to present on is a resolution I wrote about scooter speeds. Did folks get a chance to read through this? If not, I will just share it and pause so folks can skim it at least. Seeing no responses, I'm going to assume that most people did not get a chance to read it, and I will just pause here for people to skim. Just to set the stage a little bit here, though, the impetus behind this is I've been talking to a few folks about challenges in using dockless scooters throughout the city. I personally don't use them because my own bike seems to be much faster at all times and it doesn't feel as safe. So I've been trying to think what we could do as a city to make this a little bit better and safer for folks that want to use the dockless scooters. So my proposal here is that we ask DDOT to write a regulation, since right now the scooter speed limit is defined by regulation. We ask DDOT to write a regulation that increases the current speed or increases the speed limit of scooters to 15 miles an hour when they're on the road and down from 10 miles an hour to 7.5 miles per hour when they are on the sidewalk. There are a couple of technologies that scooters are used to determine whether or not they're on the sidewalk. There's GPS, and then there's LiDAR, which is just a couple of cameras on the front of the scooters. Some of the scooters in the city actually have this equipped, but the operators don't turn it on because if they slow their scooters on the sidewalk, then people are less likely to use their scooter, and that makes their scooters less profitable. So really it needs to have some sort of action where everyone is incentivized to lower the speed limit on the sidewalk. So the way to do that is to increase the speed when folks aren't on the sidewalk to about 15 miles an hour, which is what the average bike commuter is. So for folks that are on a non-electric bike, that's usually what they're going at throughout the city. So put them more in line with the speed that you're seeing in bike lanes, which will make them more likely to use bike lanes, will make things a little bit safer on the road. The other thing that I'll note is there's a couple of research papers that I was reading about scooter users and their preferences for riding. A lot of scooter users do not like riding on the sidewalks because they are pretty bumpy and are just not really pleasant to ride on, but it ends up being much safer in portions of the city, especially in portions of our ANC. And so if we can find ways to incentivize those riders into situations where they're less likely to hit people walking on the sidewalk and more able to go along with the speed of traffic or with other cyclists, that will make things a little bit safer for everyone. I'm seeing a lot of hands raised, so I will stop talking and let folks go. I believe community member Remington had the first hand raised.
Hi, thank you. What I'm wondering is, you had mentioned 15 miles per hour for the roads because that's comparable to typical bicycle speeds in the roads. Was there a reason for the number 7.5 for the sidewalks?
It's half of 15. It might make sense to be slower in portions of the city that have more sidewalk traffic. I don't think there's like a strong reason why it's 7.5. If you have a better number, I'm happy to take a suggestion. I had 8 before, I had 7, and then I was like, might as well just go 7.5. You know, make it an even half of the speed.
Well, what I'd wonder is if it's currently at 10 on sidewalks, have there been complaints or issues that it's too fast? Because if there haven't been too many issues with the speed currently, I wonder why reduce it?
Yeah, I mean, I have personally gotten a lot of complaints. I mean, when I've ridden on the sidewalk, to be honest, like I'm sure most of us on this call have ridden a scooter on a sidewalk at some point because it's late at night and you don't really trust the people driving in the city. And it sometimes just like freaks people out when you're going by them, even if you're being fairly audible. And I know folks have been hit by scooters on the sidewalk. I know it's not that super common of an occurrence, but reducing the speed a little bit on sidewalks will reduce the odds of any sort of injury to anyone.
Thank you.
Definitely see where you're coming from, though. Committee Schaaf.
Thanks, Josh. I think the resolution is clear and straightforward and looks pretty good. I did want to ask though if there were, other aspects of the scooter experience or the way the infrastructure is accommodating and that that are also worth taking into consideration. I don't have anything in particular in mind, but yeah, if we're going to do a resolution on scooters, then perhaps there are other issues that would also be worth looking into or including in a resolution.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the bigger issue is that cars can go as fast as they want, and the infrastructure isn't there to slow them down. And we're not going to get to a situation where we'll be able to put speed governors on personal vehicles anytime soon, unfortunately. That was the main thing that I was thinking about, and that a community member had emailed me. It was actually someone whose study that I cited in here. I don't remember which study, but it was J.I. Swiderski, if folks know who that is. He's a transportation planner and performed a study on scooters on sidewalks in Roslyn, Virginia. Are there other ideas that you have that you'd like to include?
So, I'm also not a scooter user. I'm a sidewalk user. So the one thing that comes to mind is, and again, not super specific, but to what extent is the regulation on fixing scooters to district property functioning? And if there was anything related to that, for example, that would I don't know how what the evaluation of that that rule is, other than my own anecdotal experience, but perhaps other people have, perhaps you or others have something to share on that.
So are you talking about the requirement that the dockless scooters and the electric bikes have locked to a bike rack?
To a bike rack or to a parking sign, or they have to be, I believe it's district property. That is the rule, but yes, that's the requirement.
Yeah. I definitely agree with some of the concerns there. It's actually gotten a lot better recently, at least in my experience. And I think that's just because the city has quadrupled the number of bike racks that they're rolling out each year. And so I don't run into a lot of situations. Like, it's still sometimes not great with some of the electric bikes, but
yeah,
I just personally don't run into a lot of situations at this point where I can't lock my bike because of too many dockless scooters. I don't know what other people's experiences are, though, and if there's something more that we want to include here. Committee member Remington, did you have more to add? I see your hand is still raised, but you might have just forgot to lower it.
Oh, my apologies. I just forgot to lower it. I guess I might ask though, I don't know if this was just covered in a conversation, but if adding a provision around usage on the mall and on federal property, I've heard a lot of concerns or complaints that that's actually one of the most valuable places that visitors and residents want to use them, but it's barred. If there's any value to adding that.
I think we could. I wonder if it's some scope creep though, because right now this is just framed as a resolution to DDOT suggesting a potential rule change that could improve the experience of scooters, and DDOT has no control over the mall or those any sort of restrictions around that area, because that's all under the jurisdiction of NPS. And so maybe it makes sense to have like some sort of separate resolution where we ask NPS to try to lighten that up. And there could be an opportunity to work with DDOT in the sense that I think they control some of like the fine tuning of the zones near the mall or near the, what's the lane that goes right next to Treasury and the White House?
Is it Constitution or Pennsylvania?
No, like it's not 14th or 15th, is it?
It's 15th, yeah.
15th, yeah. I think there are portions of 15th where scooters don't work, and it's just a miss on how exactly, like how far out from federal property that zone goes. And so I think DDOT is already trying to address that. But yeah, I guess what are other folks' thoughts on that?
I kind of agree with you on the concept of scope creep. I do think it is something worth looking at. I just worry that that is involving the federal agencies is such a, monumental part that is maybe worth its own resolution or something and looking at, and maybe leaving this one more to just the general speeds.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I will take that as a no. I guess committee member Remington, are you okay with the 7.5? Do you want to see that higher?
I don't have strong feelings about it. I'm not personally a scooter rider. I was just wondering if it was based in a lot of concerns around existing speeds, or if it was just more a way to make the increase in the road speed seem more palatable. I don't feel that strongly either way.
Okay. Does anyone have suggested changes beyond what we've already discussed? All right, sorry, I just realized I did not ask if any community members wanted to comment. Did anyone in the audience want to comment? You are welcome to raise your hand now. All right, that was the usual 10 seconds that I wait, so I will take it as a no. I will now make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt this resolution as a committee and ask the ANC to take it on. Is there any dissent? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. And I know 1B is actually working on the same resolution tonight. I did not realize that 1B's transportation committee meets at the exact same time as ours, but oh well. It's hard to coordinate schedules across ANC, so. And now I bring you yet another resolution that 1B is also working on tonight. So this is kind of in the weeds. This is a resolution recommending expenditure of highway education funds on ATE in school zones. So I need to update this number, but at a high level, we all know that Vision Zero has not gotten anywhere near the actual goal. There are some school zones in ANC 1E. DDOT emailed out yesterday saying that they are working on their triennial highway safety plan, which is something that they submit to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, covering potential behavioral changes to help improve safety on the roadways in the district. In the past, this program has exclusively focused on advertising and education in order to change driver behavior. There isn't really strong evidence that educating drivers on slowing down actually does all that much. It's nice to think that it would do something, but the research does not show an impact on driver speeds based on just educating them to slow down. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has determined that traffic enforcement and ATEs do help reduce speeds. And as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was passed, I think that was last year at this point, from the bipartisan infrastructure law, the funds that are apportioned to the District of Columbia for this program can now be used for automated traffic enforcement in school and roadwork zones. And that funding is about 2.89 million per year until 2026. So the idea is we could take some of that 2.89 million and dedicate it to traffic enforcement cameras in some of the higher risk areas in the district, and a lot of that is in school zones. So there's obviously Banneker in 1E06. I believe that there's a charter school on Kenyon right near Sherman. And then I think there's a couple of other schools further in the north. So this would allow implementation of ATEs in those areas, specifically if DDOT was to use this funding and move some away from education toward ATEs. Any thoughts or comments from the committee members on that? Questions? Does the silence indicate anything? Committee member Schaaf.
Thanks. So I took a look at the resolution before, and I think it looks great. I did have one question though. There was towards the end a part about using the remaining funds for traffic calming and something else in the school zones. Yeah, there. Yeah, okay. So to physical traffic calming methods to slow down dangerous drivers. So my only question was, is that prescriptive at all, or is it are there potentially other things that we would want to encourage those resources to be used for, or is traffic calming sort of the spectrum of I don't, like, for example, is it like a staffing question? Like, I know that there are also individuals who are involved in there's a program to have adults around the school zones to sort of manage traffic flow and students and whatnot. And so is there a larger spectrum of policy solutions that we might want to encourage? I guess that was the question.
That's fair. I am not sure if there are like particular ones where they are running into like budgetary constraints or staffing constraints where this would help beyond traffic calming. I like the idea of focusing on things that are related to safety though. So I could see traffic calming, I do not remember the name for that particular role, but the folks that are handling traffic during pickup and drop off for schools. yeah, maybe we could add that in. Do folks have other ideas? Though this does give me an idea for another resolution at some point where that group of people who do the traffic control officers is what they're called. That group of people works mornings and afternoons, and it's not really that good of a job in some sense because you can only work like 4 or 5 hours a day, and so your pay in the end, like hourly wise, might be fine, but your total pay is pretty substandard given the cost of living in DC. And so something I've been toying with is, could DDOT be training these folks to do ticketing or some sort of traffic enforcement near school zones, given like the extra time that they could have available between the morning and afternoon shifts pick up and drop off?
I mean, that's an interesting question. For this particular resolution, though, I guess one option could be like these additional cameras to physical traffic calming methods or other measures to.
That's fair.
Just to create some space for that.
Commissioner Ray?
It's just what's occurring to me is that if additional monies are coming in from the federal government to cover the cost of ATEs, when we know that the city had already put into the budget a certain amount for new ATEs, it does make me wonder, if I were the mayor, would I place some of these cameras in a school zone so that I could then take the money from the feds and then probably reuse that funding for something else, something outside of the ATE program. So just pointing out that if, this could end up with, you have the same number of ATEs, but then that money gets repurposed to something else, which could be fine, but it might not be necessarily traffic related. Just keeping that in our heads.
Oh yeah, I'm totally fine with that. I mean, in some sense, like I wish that it was used for traffic calming, but if it means that we take some money from the feds and use it towards something that actually has an impact rather than some education campaign for people that are driving personal vehicles, that's fine. Because I honestly don't know that that's a good use of money, even though the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration deems it a good use. Or rather, I guess the law deems it a good use.
They don't have a director at the moment, and they haven't for many years. So that might be why they're not good at this.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay. And committee member Remington, did you have anything to add? I see your hand is raised, but it might just be I forgot to lower it.
Sorry, I think my device is glitched. My hand is not intended to be raised and it's not displaying that on my phone.
Oh, good. All right. Any questions or comments from members of the community? See, there are a couple in the audience. If so, you just need to raise your hand. All right, seeing no hand raised, I will now make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt this resolution as a committee and pass it on to the ANC for their review. Are there any dissents? All right, the motion carries. The only other thing that I will add, since I forgot to at the beginning, because I thought committee member Schaaf was going to bring this up, but do you want to go ahead and speak about your idea quickly that you had emailed me about, since I think it's a wonderful idea?
Sure. Basically, the idea was to organize an audit of the bicycle infrastructure in the ANC, both to sort of assess or identify dangerous spots, but then also we also have aging bicycle infrastructure in the ANC, and so potentially also to identify areas where updates might be necessary to existing infrastructure. And so I'm in the sort of, I had this idea. I've been doing some research, and it sounds like Josh also has some ideas, and there might be some other folks. So certainly others who are interested in this in one way or another, please let me know. Please let Josh know. And both, I think, like from actually, the willingness to participate in the audit, and then also in the conceptual design phase.
Yeah, happy to participate as a frequent user of the bike infrastructure in the ANC.
Great.
Cool. Yeah, and I am chatting with a few other folks about it too, and we'll probably have a brainstorm session at some point to figure out what exactly it should look like. If it's just bikes, if we look at important intersections, or how we want to divide up that work. So, all right. Any other topics or questions that folks wanted to bring up before we adjourn? I will quickly note then that the next TPS meeting is tentatively scheduled for Wednesday, July 5th. We might want to change that or figure out what to do with July, given it's the day after the 4th of July. And I'm not sure who's all not going to be around or who will be around. And then the next general meeting for ANC 1E is Wednesday, June 28th, where I'll be discussing these two resolutions that we talked about tonight. And both those meetings will be held virtually. So I make a motion with unanimous consent to adjourn the ANC 1E Transportation and Public Spaces meeting. Is there any dissent? All right, we adjourn at 8:18 p.m. Thanks everyone so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it, and have a good rest of your night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.